Before the first bird sang, before the first river cut its way through the red earth, before the first human took breath, there was silence. The land we now know as Australia stretched wide and ancient, but in this earliest of times, it was formless. There were no trees, no mountains, no seas. The earth was flat, featureless, and quiet, a vast canvas waiting for creation. This was the moment before Dreamtime, the sacred era when everything began. Dreamtime, or the dreaming, as is often translated, is not just a story of creation in Aboriginal culture. It is both origin and ongoing truth, an eternal framework through which the world is explained and lived. For Indigenous Australians, Dreamtime is not simply a myth of long ago, the way Western traditions might treat ancient legends. It is a living, breathing reality that continues in the land, the people, and the spiritual world. It is a way of knowing, a law, and a guide to existence. Imagine, then, a time beyond time, when the universe stirred with unseen energy. Out of this vast stillness, immense ancestor spirits began to awaken. Some were part human, part animal. Others were serpents, birds, or great beings of the sky. They stretched and moved across the barren earth, and wherever they walked, the world began to take shape. Their songs carried power, the sound of creation itself. With every step, mountain ridges rose. With every note, rivers flowed. Lakes formed where they rested, forests sprouted where they paused, and creatures crawled, swam, and flew as they willed them into being. This is the heart of Dreamtime, creation through journey, song, and spirit. The ancestor beings were not gods in the sense of distant deities ruling from the heavens. Instead, they were life forgers intimately tied to the land. Their actions left marks that remain visible today. A sacred rock might be the resting place of a great kangaroo spirit. A winding river might be the trail of the Rainbow Serpent. In this way, every part of the landscape is alive with meaning, a testimony to the deeds of Dreamtime. To Aboriginal people. Then, Dreamtime is everywhere. It is not locked in the past, but continues in the present. Each time a songline is sung or a ceremonial dance performed, the world of Dreamtime reawakens. Elders explained that time is not linear, but layered. The ancestors are still here, their presence lingering in landforms, in the stars, in totem animals, and in the souls of people. In fact, human beings themselves are thought to be directly linked to Dreamtime. Their spirits exist there before birth and return there after death. But to truly grasp Dreamtime, one must set aside Western notions of myth as mere story. For Indigenous Australians, these are not tales invented to entertain or speculate. They are truths handed down from generation to generation, encoded in memory through oral tradition, painting, dance, and ritual. The Dreamtime is history, spirituality, law, and science intertwined. It explains how the sun and moon came to be, how fire was discovered, why certain animals have their shapes, and why communities must respect the land. Take, for example, the Rainbow Serpent, one of the most widely known ancestral beings. Its story varies among different Aboriginal nations, but always it embodies the sacredness of water and fertility. To follow the path of a river is, in a sense, to follow the body of the serpent itself. Likewise, when one gazes at a mountain ridge, it might be the spine of a giant spirit sleeping still. Every tree, every cave, every stretch of desert is not empty space, but sacred geography, what some call a story place. The introduction of Dreamtime into conversation often leaves outsiders fascinated but puzzled. Is it religion? Is it folklore? Is it philosophy? The answer is that it is all of these, but also more. It is a worldview. It is how Aboriginal people understood their place in the cosmos and how they passed on wisdom without written language. Through songlines, they carried maps across thousands of kilometers, embedding practical survival knowledge within sacred narrative. A melody might describe where to find waterholes, when to expect certain animals to migrate, or how to cross dangerous terrain. Yet at the same time, that same melody would recount the journey of ancestor spirits, making it both pragmatic and spiritual. In the Dreamtime introduction, we must also speak about responsibility. The ancestor beings did not merely create the world and vanish. They established laws for how humans must live. Laws about kinship, marriage, hunting, and ceremony. To break these laws is not simply to disobey tradition, but to disturb the cosmic balance. In Aboriginal understanding, humans are custodians, not owners of the land. They walk upon sacred ground shaped by their ancestors, and their duty is to care for it in harmony. This ethic of stewardship is not separate from Dreamtime. It is Dreamtime itself. To enter Dreamtime is also to enter a sacred relationship with time itself. While Western cultures imagine time as a line stretching from past to future, Dreamtime is cyclical, eternal, ever-present. It is both the time of beginnings and the continuing heartbeat of existence. A ceremony today does not merely remember what happened, it reenacts and renews it. The ancestors act again through the voices, the painted bodies, the drum beats, and the songs. Thus, Dreamtime is not memory alone. It is participation in ongoing creation. As we begin this journey into the Dreamtime story, we must listen carefully, for the words are not just information but invitation. They ask us to see the world differently, to recognize spirit in land, song in silence, meaning in every feature of the environment. They ask us to honor what has been handed down for tens of thousands of years, one of the oldest continuous traditions on Earth. The story of Dreamtime is vast. It stretches across countless Aboriginal nations, each with its own version, its own sacred places, and its own ancestral figures. Yet despite these variations, certain themes echo everywhere. The awakening of great beings, the shaping of land through journey and song, the creation of animals and people, and the setting of laws that ensure survival and balance. In the following chapters, we will walk step by step through these themes, following the ancestors as they carve the world, learning from their deeds, and understanding the wisdom embedded in their stories. We begin at the threshold, a flat earth, silent and waiting. The spirits stir beneath the surface, ready to emerge. The first songs tremble in the air, about to give rise to rivers, mountains, and sky. Soon the land will awaken, vibrant with life, alive with meaning. This is the Dreamtime, the eternal story of creation, the sacred pulse that continues to shape the world today. The stillness of the world before time did not last. Beneath the silent surface of the earth, within the deep waters, and high above in the sky, the great ancestor spirits began to stir. They had always been there, sleeping within the land, waiting for the moment of awakening. When they opened their eyes, the formless earth shivered, and when they stretched, the horizon itself seemed to ripple. The Dreamtime had begun to unfold. These spirits were immense in presence, beings that defy easy description. Some were part human, part animal. Others were entirely animal, yet carried wisdom and power far beyond ordinary creatures. Some were serpents whose bodies could carve valleys as they moved. Others were birds whose wings spread wide enough to cast shadows across plains. Kangaroos, emus, dingoes, crocodiles, bats, and countless other beings emerged, each with its own story and its own role in the shaping of the world. They did not simply appear in one place and remain there. Instead, they journeyed across the land, and with every step, the land was transformed. As the spirits moved, their immense weight pressed hollows into the ground that became waterholes. Their tails swept dirt into ridges that became mountains. Their voices rang out in chants and songs that rippled across the world like invisible waves, and wherever the sound passed, life sprang forth. Grass unfurled, trees rose, animals stirred, and rivers began to flow. Creation was not instantaneous, but a process, a sacred traveling and singing that mapped out the living earth. This act of creation by movement and song is one of the most profound features of Dreamtime stories. To the Aboriginal peoples, the world is not simply made in a moment of divine command. It is sung into being step by step, melody by melody. The ancestor spirits carried songs that contained the essence of all life. As they traveled, they sang, and the world took shape according to their melodies. These pathways of creation became known as songlines. Imagine a spirit in the form of a giant kangaroo traveling across a vast expanse. As it leaps, the earth trembles and valleys appear. Where it lands, depressions fill with water to form sacred lakes. As it sings, its song weaves patterns into the land, a kind of sacred blueprint. Generations later, Aboriginal clans would follow these very patterns, knowing that to trace the song lines was to walk the same path as the ancestors. To keep creation a live point, one of the most powerful of these beings was the Rainbow Serpent. Emerging from deep within the earth, it slithered across the barren land, its immense coils carving out riverbeds and valleys. Its colors shimmered like the arc of a rainbow in the sky, symbolizing both the promise of life and the power of destruction. Where the serpent moved, water flowed, and life flourished. But it was also a being of great authority. To disobey the laws set down by the ancestors was to risk the serpent's wrath. In its presence, one sees the dual nature of the spirits, nurturing yet fierce, creative yet capable of punishment. Alongside the rainbow serpent, many other beings moved across the Dreamtime landscape. The great emu spirit stretched its long neck and pecked at the ground, scattering seeds that grew into shrubs and grasses. The crow spirit flew overhead, carrying fire in its beak, dropping sparks that set the first flames on the earth. The bat spirit flapped through caverns, its calls shaping the echoing chambers of caves. Each of these spirits contributed something unique: food, fire, shelter, or wisdom. Each was vital to the survival of those who would come after it. It is important to remember that these stories are not uniform across the continent. Australia is vast, and its First Nations people developed hundreds of variations of Dreamtime narratives. One community might speak of a great crocodile spirit that shaped rivers, while another might tell of ancestral possums or lizards. Yet the theme of awakening, traveling, singing, and shaping is consistent. It is a shared truth with many voices. As the spirits continued their journeys, they did more than shape land. They also shaped order. They established patterns of kinship, law, and morality. The ancestor spirits taught that every creature and every person has a place in the great web of life. They demonstrated through their actions the importance of balance. When one spirit hoarded food or acted with arrogance, consequences followed. When another shared generously, harmony spread. Through such examples, the laws of life were set down, not written in books, but etched into story, song, and land. The journeys were long, spanning thousands of kilometers. Some spirits traveled alone, while others moved in groups, their combined voices creating harmony. Along their paths, they left sacred sites, rocks where they rested, caves where they slept, trees where they paused to sing. These places became eternal reminders of their presence, holy places where ceremonies would later be performed to honor them. For Aboriginal communities, visiting such sites was not a matter of tourism or curiosity, but of spiritual duty. To care for these places was to maintain the link with the Dreamtime itself. Eventually, the journeys slowed. The ancestor spirits, having sung rivers, mountains, animals, and plants into being, began to grow weary. Some sank back into the ground, returning to sleep beneath the surface. Others transformed into features of the landscape: a boulder, a hill, a star in the sky. Their bodies became part of the world they had created, but their essence remained alive. They did not vanish. They lingered, watching, guiding, and waiting for the songs to be sung again by human voices. This cycle of awakening, traveling, creating, and resting reflects the cyclical nature of Dreamtime itself. Time is not a straight line with a beginning and an end. Instead, it is a circle, a spiral that continues forever. The ancestors are still present in the land, and every ritual, every painting, every song is a reawakening of their journeys. To walk the land with reverence is to walk beside them still. Thus, the awakening of the ancestor spirits is not merely a distant myth. It is the foundation of the world, the origin of sacred law, and the reason why every hill, tree, and river carries meaning. It explains why Aboriginal people see themselves not as owners of the land, but as its custodians. The land is alive with spirit, and caring for it means honoring the ancestors who shaped it. As we leave this part of the story, the world is no longer flat and empty. Rivers flow where serpents have passed. Mountains rise where giants have rested. Forests bloom where birds have sung. Life teems across the land, each creature carrying the spirit of its ancestor. The stage is now set for the next great moment of Dreamtime, the creation of people themselves who will inherit both the beauty of the earth and the responsibility to care for it. When the great ancestor spirits moved across the barren world, they did not only shape rivers and mountains with their bodies and voices. They also left behind pathways, invisible threads woven into the land, encoded with memory and meaning. These sacred paths came to be known as songlines. To walk upon one is to walk the same trail as the ancestors. To sing one is to renew the very act of creation. Songlines are not just songs. They are maps, histories, and spiritual lifelines that bind people to country and their heart. Songlines are living narratives. Each verse of song recounts the journey of a spirit being, where it walked, where it rested, what it created. To sing a songline is to remember those steps in order. The melody might describe a hill shaped by the spirit's footstep, a tree where it paused, a water hole where it drank, or a valley where its body lay down to sleep. These details, carried in rhythm and chant, form a guide across the land. One does not need a written map when the earth itself is a song. For Aboriginal peoples, these songlines are more than navigation. They are sacred obligations. A songline is both a spiritual connection and a duty to keep alive. When a person sings the path of their ancestor, they are not merely recalling history. They are participating in Dreamtime itself. The act of singing reactivates the creation, ensuring that the world remains in balance. If people were to forget the songs, the ancestors' presence would fade and the world could lose its harmony. Imagine, for a moment, a traveler in the desert. To outsiders, the land might appear endless, a confusing stretch of red sand and scattered shrubs. But to someone who knows the songlines, every feature is a landmark, every rise and hollow a verse in the great ancestral melody. They sing as they walk, each note guiding them to the next waterhole, the next shade tree, the next sacred site. What seems desolate becomes a richly annotated text, one written not in ink but in stone, sky, and memory. Anthropologists who studied songlines often marveled at their complexity. A single songline could stretch across hundreds of kilometers, linking distant communities. In some cases, the same ancestral journey passed through different language groups. Each group would know and maintain the portion of the song tied to their country. Yet together, the entire pathway could be pieced into a continuous narrative spanning vast territory. This interconnectedness meant that songlines were also social bridges. To travel them was to recognize shared origins, to honor neighboring clans, and to maintain peace. The act of sharing a songline was not casual. Permission was required, and knowledge was often restricted to elders or initiated members. To reveal a sacred verse to an outsider without authority was considered dangerous, even sacrilegious. The power of songlines lay not just in their poetry, but in their sacredness. They were gifts from the ancestors, to be guarded, honored, and renewed through proper ceremony. The songs themselves often contained layers of meaning. On one level, they were practical, giving directions to survive in the harsh Australian environment. On another level, they were spiritual, recounting how the land came to be and reminding people of their responsibilities. A verse might say, "The emu walked here, and its foot pressed the ground." On the surface, this describes a footprint-shaped depression in the earth, but spiritually it connects the walker to the emu spirit, the law it set down, and the totemic responsibilities of those who belong to that lineage. Art was another way of preserving and expressing songlines. Rock paintings, carvings, and later paintings often depicted scenes from these ancestral journeys. A spiral might represent a waterhole created by the Rainbow Serpent. Concentric circles might show a campsite along a songline. When seen without context, these images might look abstract, but for those initiated into their meanings, they are visual maps, sacred reminders of the journeys sung into the earth. Ceremonies, too, brought the songlines to life. Dances mimicked the movements of ancestor beings, leaping kangaroos, soaring birds, slithering serpents. Chanting and clapping echoed the rhythms of their songs. Painted bodies carried patterns that represented the landforms created along the way. These performances were not entertainment. They were acts of renewal. Each time the ceremonies were performed, the Dreamtime was kept alive, and the land itself was nourished with memory. The songlines also explain why the Aboriginal relationship to land is so profoundly different from Western concepts of property. For Indigenous people, land is not something one owns, but something one belongs to. To know a songline is to carry responsibility for that stretch of country, to care for its waterholes, to protect its animals, to honor its sacred places. Ignoring these duties is not simply neglect. It is breaking the law of the ancestors. This is why displacement and disconnection from land have been such deep wounds in Aboriginal history. To lose one's country is to lose the ability to sing the songline, to lose the bond with Dreamtime itself. Interestingly, songlines are not limited to the earth. Some extend into the sky. Stars and constellations, too, were woven into ancestral journeys. The Milky Way, for example, might be seen as the track of a great spirit, while certain star clusters represented campsites along the heavenly route. Thus, the land and the sky together formed a mirrored map, guiding travelers both day and night, linking human existence to the cosmos. In this way, songlines blur the boundaries between geography, spirituality, and knowledge systems. They serve as oral libraries, carrying ecological wisdom, ethical instruction, and cultural history in one seamless form. They are mnemonic devices, sacred scriptures, and practical survival guides rolled into one. And because they are sung, they can adapt. Each performance breathes life into them anew, keeping them flexible while ensuring their essence remains constant. The importance of songlines cannot be overstated. They are the arteries of Dreamtime, carrying lifeblood across the land, connecting communities, sustaining identity. Without them, creation would wither. With them, creation is eternal. As the Ancestor Spirits completed their journeys, they left these songs for humanity to inherit. The land was now full of sacred places and pathways, each encoded with a story. The stage was set for the next step, the creation of people themselves. The ancestors had carved rivers, raised mountains, filled forests, and sung the map into existence. Now they would breathe life into clay, shaping beings who would walk the songlines, sing the songs, and take on the responsibility of caring for the land that had been given. The land was alive now. Rivers curled like serpents across the plains. Mountains rose where giants had rested. Forests swayed in the wind, and animals bounded across the earth in endless variety. Yet something was still missing. The ancestor spirits looked upon their creation and saw that it needed caretakers, beings who would inherit the songs, tend to the sacred places, and keep the balance alive. It was then, during the Dreamtime, that people were created. The stories of how humanity came into being differ across the vast Australian continent. Some tell of ancestors who molded the first humans from clay, shaping limbs and faces with careful hands before breathing life into them. Others speak of spirits who transformed from animals into people, gifting their descendants both human form and animal kinship. Still others tell of people who emerged directly from the land itself, rising out of waterholes, caves, or the very earth where the ancestors had slept. Despite their differences, these stories share one truth. Humans were born out of the land, not apart from it. From the beginning, people were never masters of a land. They were its children, its custodians. The ancestor spirits made this clear by weaving law into the very fabric of creation. Humans were to live in balance with animals, plants, and landscapes. They were not to take more than they needed, nor to neglect the sacred sites. They were given songs and ceremonies, not as entertainment, but as obligations, ways to keep the dreaming alive. In this way, creation was not finished in a single moment. It continued, and continues still, through human responsibility. The ancestor spirits did not create humanity as a single undifferentiated group. Instead, they gave people structure. They divided them into clans and kinship systems, each tied to specific totems, laws, and territories. A totem might be a kangaroo, an emu, a snake, a lizard, or even a star. Each totem carried both privilege and responsibility. If one's totem was the kangaroo, then that person had a sacred duty to protect and honor kangaroos. They could not kill or eat the animal except under very specific ceremonial conditions. For to harm one's totem without cause was to harm oneself and dishonor the ancestor who had gifted that identity, that I in this way. Clans were bound directly to the natural world. People were never separate from animals or plants. They were kin. Totems became spiritual markers, linking individuals to their ancestral beings and to the landscapes those beings had shaped. Each person carried within them a direct line back to the Dreamtime, and each clan embodied a living piece of creation's puzzle. Together, these interlocking responsibilities formed a network of balance. Kinship extended beyond totems. It shaped every aspect of social life: who one could marry, how one addressed others, what responsibilities one held. These were not random decisions, but sacred laws derived from Dreamtime. Marriage rules, for example, ensured that bloodlines remained healthy and alliances between clans were maintained. Elders passed down this knowledge carefully, teaching that to break these laws was not only a social offense, but a cosmic one, disturbing the balance set by the ancestors. The creation of people also brought with it the birth of ceremony. The ancestor spirits did not simply leave humans to wander aimlessly. They gave them rituals, dances, and songs to keep creation alive. When people gathered to paint their bodies, chant verses, and dance the movements of kangaroos, emus, or serpents, they were not merely imitating animals. They were reenacting the journeys of the ancestors, renewing the Dreamtime, and reawakening the land's memory. Every ceremony was both a reminder and a recreation. Initiation ceremonies were especially important. Young people were not considered full members of the community until they had undergone rites that linked them directly to their ancestral stories. During these rituals, elders would teach them sacred knowledge, reveal the meanings of certain songs or symbols, and mark their bodies with designs that represented their totems and responsibilities. This process ensured continuity. Every new generation inherited the dreaming, and every generation was bound to pass it on. One story from the Northern Territory tells of how the first humans were created from the red ochre of the earth. The ancestor shaped their bodies, painted them with designs, and taught them to dance. As they moved, the ochre on their skin became patterns that reflected the land itself. When the dance ended, they were no longer figures of ochre, but living people ready to care for the world. To this day, ochre is used in ceremonies as a sacred pigment, reminding people of their origin. Another tradition from the desert region speaks of a great ancestor who carried a bundle of spears. As he traveled, he cast them across the land, and wherever a spear landed, a new clan arose. Each clan was tied to the place where its spear fell, and each inherited a portion of his power. In this way, geography and identity were forever linked. No clan could exist without its country, and no country could exist without its clan. The laws given by the ancestors were not only about survival, but about morality. Stories from Dreamtime often highlight virtues such as sharing, respect, and humility. For example, a tale might recount how a greedy ancestor hoarded food, only to be punished by transformation into a stone or an animal, serving as a permanent reminder of the dangers of selfishness. By contrast, an ancestor who shared generously might be rewarded by being placed among the stars, where their light could guide travelers. Through such stories, people learned how to live not only with each other, but with the wider world. A clan spread across the land. Each carried its own stories, songs, and responsibilities, yet they were never isolated. Songlines connected them, ensuring that even distant groups shared a spiritual web of belonging. When people from different clans met, they could sing parts of the same ancestral journey, confirming kinship across distance. This interconnectedness was a safeguard against division, reminding all that they were part of a greater whole. The creation of people in Dreamtime was therefore not simply the birth of humanity. It was the birth of culture, law, and society. It established the foundations of kinship, ceremony, and responsibility that continue to guide Aboriginal peoples to this day. To be human in this worldview is not to stand apart from the natural world, but to be woven into it. Every person is a thread in the great tapestry of Dreamtime, a living continuation of ancestral creation. As we leave this part of the story, humanity has entered the world. Clans have formed, bound by totems and law. Ceremonies echo with chants and dances that renew creation. The land is alive, not only with rivers and mountains, but with people who understand themselves as part of its sacred design. Yet the Dreamtime journey is far from over. With humans now walking the earth, new stories will emerge. Tales of how they learned to survive, how they listened to the teachings of the ancestors, and how they faced the challenges of living in harmony with all of creation. The Dreamtime was not only a story of creation, it was also a story of law. When the ancestor spirits traveled, shaped the earth, and brought people into being, they also established a code of conduct. This code was not written on scrolls or carved into stone tablets. It was woven into story, song, and land. It was living law, carried in memory, practiced in ceremony, and enforced by community. Through it, the ancestors taught people how to live in harmony with each other, with animals, and with the land itself. The heart of this law was balance. The ancestors made it clear that the world was not infinite in its generosity. Every creature, every waterhole, every tree had its place and its limits. To take too much was to upset the balance. To neglect one's duties was to dishonor the ancestors. Dreamtime stories illustrate this principle through cautionary tales, narratives in which greed, arrogance, or violence bring misfortune, while sharing, respect, and humility bring harmony. One such story tells of a great hunter who boasted of his skills and killed more kangaroos than his family could eat. Proud of his strength, he left the carcasses to rot under the sun. But the kangaroo spirit, offended by this waste, cursed him. The hunter grew weaker with every step until he could no longer lift his spear. His clan abandoned him, and he was transformed into a dry, twisted tree as punishment for his arrogance. The moral was clear. One must never take more than needed, for greed leads to destruction not only of the land but of the self. Another tale, told in desert regions, speaks of two brothers who discovered a waterhole during a long drought. Instead of sharing the precious water with their people, they guarded it fiercely, driving others away. The Rainbow Serpent, guardian of waters, grew enraged. It rose from the depths of the pool, swallowed the brothers whole, and vanished beneath the surface, leaving the land parched once more. To this day, the story warns of the dangers of selfishness and the sacred obligation to share resources. Through such stories, the ancestors taught laws of conduct that reached every aspect of life. Marriage rules, for example, were not arbitrary but grounded in Dreamtime. By assigning clans to different totems and establishing kinship patterns, the ancestors created guidelines for who could marry whom. Violating these laws was not only a social offense, but a cosmic one. It disrupted the ancestral order and risked punishment, whether through illness, misfortune, or the anger of spirit beings. Respect for elders was another key principle. Elders were not only older in age, but carriers of knowledge. They had memorized the songs, the stories, the sacred sites, and the ceremonies. To ignore their wisdom was to cut oneself off from the dreaming. Stories abound of young men who mocked their elders or refused to listen, only to wander lost in the bush or fall victim to hunger. These narratives reinforce the truth that survival itself depended on respecting knowledge, and those who carried it. Generosity was equally vital. In many Dreamtime stories, heroes succeed not because they are the strongest, but because they share what they have. A spirit might give fire to others, teaching that knowledge is not meant to be hoarded. Another might divide food equally among the group, showing that abundance comes through cooperation. In this way, morality was tied directly to survival. Communities could not thrive without generosity, and the ancestors made sure that lesson was remembered. Ceremony was perhaps the most important way of upholding these laws. To perform a dance or chant was not simply to celebrate. It was to renew the laws of the ancestors. By mimicking the movements of a serpent, a bird, or a kangaroo, dancers reminded the community of their duties to those beings. By singing the verses of a songline, singers reinforced the laws of sharing and respect embedded in those stories. Law was not separate from art. It was inseparable from it. Punishment for breaking these laws could take many forms. Sometimes it was believed that the spirits themselves would punish offenders with illness or misfortune. Other times, the community carried out justice in ways that reflected ancestral teachings. Yet even punishment was not meant to destroy, but to restore balance. The goal was not vengeance, but harmony, ensuring that the cycle of Dreamtime remained unbroken. The laws also extended to gender roles, though not in the rigid sense often seen in other cultures. Men and women were both essential to Dreamtime ceremonies, but their responsibilities differed. Men often carried certain ritual knowledge, particularly related to hunting and warfare, while women held knowledge of food gathering, child rearing, and sacred women's ceremonies. Both roles were equally sacred, each reflecting ancestral patterns. Stories explained why this division existed, often tying it to the actions of spirit beings who had set these patterns during their travels. The ancestors also taught people to listen to the land itself. Signs in nature were not random. The call of a bird, the blooming of a flower, the movement of stars, all could be messages. To ignore them was to risk danger. To observe them was to live wisely. For example, some Dreamtime teachings describe how certain constellations signal the arrival of a particular season, guiding people on when to hunt, fish, or gather. In this way, the laws of survival were written into the sky, waiting to be read by those who paid attention. What makes Dreamtime law unique is that it does not separate the sacred from the practical. Hunting rules are also spiritual rules. Marriage laws are also cosmic laws. Ecological wisdom is tied to morality. There is no division between religion, science, and law. Everything is one, woven into the same fabric of Dreamtime. To live rightly is not only to be moral, but also to be ecological, spiritual, and communal all at once. This worldview also shaped conflict resolution. When disputes arose between clans, they were often resolved through ritual, negotiation, and sometimes ceremonial combat. These methods were not about domination, but about restoring balance. Even warfare had ritualized aspects, ensuring that violence did not spiral into endless cycles of revenge. The guiding principle was always the same: balance must be restored. Through these lessons, the ancestor spirits gave people a foundation that has endured for tens of thousands of years. Even today, Aboriginal communities look to the Dreamtime for guidance, finding in its stories the principles of respect, balance, and responsibility. These teachings are not relics of the past. They are living law, carried forward in ceremonies, art, and oral tradition. As we leave this part of the story, we see that Dreamtime is not only about how the world began, but also about how to live in it. The ancestors created rivers and mountains, but they also created law. They showed humanity how to survive, how to share, how to respect, and how to restore harmony when it is broken. The next part of the Dreamtime story will turn to another vital theme: the spiritual relationship between people and the land, a connection so deep that it defines identity itself. For Aboriginal peoples, the Dreamtime was never a distant past. It was and remains a living reality, woven into every stone, tree, and river. If the ancestors shaped the land with their journeys, songs, and deeds, then the land itself is sacred. To walk upon, it is to walk upon the bodies and memories of those ancestors. To drink from a water hole is to receive a gift directly from a spirit being. To hunt in the bush is not simply survival, but participation in a cosmic cycle of respect and renewal. Land is not a backdrop to life, it is life itself. This is why the relationship between people and land is often described as one of kinship rather than ownership. In Western thought, land can be divided, sold, or exploited as property. In Dreamtime law, such an idea is alien. People do not own land, they belong to it. Each clan is tied to its country, a specific area shaped by the journeys of their ancestral beings. That country is not only their home, but their identity, their teacher, and their sacred duty. To lose one's country is to lose a part of oneself. The land speaks through its features, and each feature carries story. A hill may be the resting place of a great serpent. A grove of trees may mark where an ancestor paused to sing. A cave may hold the echo of a spirit's voice. These are not metaphors, they're living truths. The rock is not just rock, it is ancestor. The tree is not just tree, it is kin. The country holds memory in physical form, and people are responsible for keeping that memory alive through ceremony, song, and care. This sacred relationship explains why caring for country is one of the most central principles in Aboriginal life. To care for country is not merely environmental stewardship, though it certainly achieves that. It is a spiritual obligation. Waterholes must be kept clean because they are gifts of the ancestors. Fire must be used carefully to regenerate the land, as guided by ancient practices. Hunting must be done with respect, ensuring that animal populations are never depleted. Every act of care is an act of honoring the Dreamtime. Songlines tie people to land in a deeply personal way. Each clan inherits the songs that cross their country, and by singing them, they renew the land. When a man sings of the kangaroo ancestor leaping across the hills, he is not merely recounting a myth. He is awakening the ancestor within the land, ensuring that kangaroos continue to thrive. When a woman sings of the emu spirit at a waterhole, she is ensuring that the waterhole remains sacred and abundant. Without these songs, the land risks falling silent, its spiritual essence neglected. Art also plays a role in keeping the land alive. Rock paintings often mark sacred sites, depicting the ancestors who created them. Dot paintings, developed later, map out songlines and dreamtime journeys, showing rivers, waterholes, and spirit beings in symbolic form. These artworks are not simply decoration, they are sacred texts. To paint the land is to honor it, to inscribe memory onto its surface, and to pass knowledge to future generations. This deep connection to land also shapes identity. A person is not just an individual. They're a member of a clan tied to a specific country, to a specific ancestor, to a specific songline. Introductions often include references to one's totem and country, because who you are cannot be separated from where you come from. The land itself becomes part of personal and collective identity, binding individuals to their community and their ancestors in a living chain. Dreamtime stories emphasize that this bond is eternal. The ancestors may have sunk back into the ground, but they never disappeared. They remain present in the land, watching, guiding, and sometimes punishing. This means that the land is always alive, always aware. To harm it carelessly is to insult the ancestors directly. To honor it with ceremony is to strengthen the bond between human and spirit. This worldview also explains the depth of loss experienced when Aboriginal people were displaced from their lands during colonization. To be removed from one's country was not only to lose access to resources, it was to lose connection to ancestors, stories, and identity. Without the land, the songs cannot be sung. Without the songs, the ancestors cannot be renewed. Such disconnection is a spiritual wound, one that many communities still struggle to heal. Yet despite this history, the relationship to land endures. Many Aboriginal people continue to return to their country whenever possible, performing ceremonies, teaching young people the stories, and keeping alive the songlines. Caring for sacred sites remains a central duty, and when mining or development threatens these places, resistance is not merely political, it is spiritual. It is a defense of the Dreamtime itself. The connection to land also extends to the sky. Just as rivers and mountains are sacred, so too are stars and constellations. Many Dreamtime stories describe how ancestors ascended into the heavens, becoming stars that continue to watch over the earth. The Milky Way might be seen as a river of ancestral spirits, while specific constellations might represent animals, hunters, or ceremonial sites. The sky thus mirrors the land, creating a cosmic map that links Earth and heaven in one continuous dreamtime. This inseparable bond between people and land has profound implications for how knowledge is passed on. Because the land itself is the text, knowledge is transmitted through walking, singing, and experiencing country. A child learns not by reading books, but by walking with elders, hearing the stories at each landmark, and performing the songs that keep them alive. The land is both school and scripture, teacher and library. In this way, Dreamtime offers a vision of sustainability that is deeply relevant even today. At a time when the modern world faces ecological crises, Aboriginal teachings remind us that caring for the environment is not optional. It is a sacred duty. The balance of the world depends on respect, restraint, and reverence. To pollute rivers, clear forests recklessly, or drive species to extinction is not only ecological folly, it is a moral failure. The ancestors' lessons resonate as strongly now as they did thousands of years ago. As we leave this part of the story, the world of Dreamtime stands revealed not only as a creation story, but as a philosophy of belonging. People are not separate from the land. They are threads in its fabric. The rivers flow with ancestral memory. The mountains rise with ancestral strength. The stars shine with ancestral presence. To care for the land is to care for oneself, and to neglect it is to neglect one's very being. In the next part, we will explore how this deep connection gave rise to rituals and ceremonies, the living expressions of Dreamtime that continue to keep creation alive. The Dreamtime was not an event that happened once and ended. It was, and remains, a continuing process. The ancestor spirits shaped the land, gave people their laws, and then sank into the earth, the sky, or the water holes. Yet they did not disappear. They lingered, waiting to be reawakened through ritual. For Aboriginal peoples, rituals and ceremonies are the vital threads that tie human beings to the Dreamtime, ensuring that creation does not fade but remains alive and strong. These ceremonies are not merely symbolic acts or cultural performances. They are living actions that renew the world. When a community gathers to sing, dance, or paint, they're not just remembering the ancestors. They're reenacting their journeys, bringing them back into presence. The Dreamtime is a cycle, and rituals are the turning of that wheel. Without them, the songs would fall silent, the land would grow weak, and the balance of creation could unravel. Ceremonies as renewal in many traditions, ceremonies are described as making the dreaming strong. They are ways of ensuring that the ancestors continue to nourish the land and people. For example, when men dance the movements of kangaroos, leaping, pausing, scratching at the ground, they're not only imitating animals. They are calling on the kangaroo spirit, renewing its presence in the country, and ensuring that kangaroos remain abundant for hunting. When women sing the songs of emus at the waterholes, they're awakening the emu spirit, helping to keep waterholes full and healthy. This principle of renewal shows that Dreamtime is never static. Every ritual performance reactivates creation. Just as the ancestors once sang the world into existence, so too do their descendants sing and dance to keep it alive. Types of rituals, there are many forms of ceremony, each with its own purpose and sacredness. Some are for the whole community, such as initiation rites, seasonal ceremonies, or gatherings to mark births and deaths. Others are highly restricted, known only to initiated men or women. Some last a few hours, while others can continue for weeks, with singing, dancing, and storytelling unfolding night after night. But initiation rituals are especially important. They mark the transition from childhood to adulthood and the assumption of full responsibilities within the community. During these rites, young people are taught sacred songs and stories that they were not allowed to know before. They are also given new body designs painted in ochre representing their totems and ties to the land. Mortuary ceremonies honor the dead, guiding their spirits back to the land of the ancestors. These rites ensure that the person's essence returns to the dream time, where it can continue its cycle and eventually be reborn. Seasonal ceremonies often coincide with natural changes, such as the blooming of certain flowers or the appearance of specific constellations. These rituals ensure that food sources remain plentiful and that people remain in harmony with the rhythms of nature. The role of music and dance lie at the heart of these ceremonies. Songs are the carriers of Dreamtime stories, encoding the journeys of ancestors in rhythm and melody. Didgeridoos, clapsticks, and chants provide the soundscape, while dancers embody the movements of spirits. To an outsider, these dances may appear as performance, but for those within the tradition, they're sacred reenactments of creation. Every gesture, every beat of the clapsticks, every note of the didgeridoo is layered with meaning. A raised arm might represent the flight of a bird ancestor. A stomp might recall the heavy step of a giant spirit. Even silence can hold power, reflecting moments of stillness in the ancestors' journeys. Body painting and sacred symbols. Body painting is another essential element. Participants cover themselves with ochre and other natural pigments, painting patterns that represent their totems, their clans, and the stories being told. Concentric circles may symbolize water holes. Zigzag lines may represent lightning or serpents. These designs are not chosen for decoration, but carry specific meanings. Known and respected within the community, that be why painting their bodies, participants become living canvases of Dreamtime. Their movements and dance bring the symbols to life, uniting art, story, and ceremony into one living act of creation. Restricted knowledge and sacred sites. Not all ceremonies are open to everyone. Certain songs and rituals are considered too powerful for uninitiated people. They are passed down carefully from elders to younger generations, often with years of preparation before the sacred knowledge is revealed. This restriction is not about exclusion, but about respect. Knowledge is powerful, and it must be carried responsibly. Many rituals are also tied to specific sacred sites. A cave, a rock formation, or a water hole may be the place where an ancestor rested or transformed. Ceremonies performed at these sites awaken the presence of the ancestor and renew the power of the place. To perform the wrong ceremony at the wrong place is not only ineffective, it can be dangerous, disturbing the balance of a land. The power of performance ceremonies can last long into the night, with fires crackling, voices chanting, and dancers moving under the stars. These gatherings bring the community together, uniting elders, adults, and children in a shared act of remembrance and renewal. They also serve as education. Children learn the stories by watching, listening, and eventually participating. Through ritual, knowledge is never lost but carried forward across generations. Some ceremonies even involve creating temporary artworks, such as ground paintings made of ochre, feathers, and leaves. These are laid out in symbolic patterns during the ritual and then allowed to fade back into the earth afterward. Their impermanence reflects the cycle of Dreamtime itself. Always renewed, never fixed, always flowing. Continuity into the present even today, despite the disruptions of colonization and modern life. Rituals and ceremonies remain central in many Aboriginal communities. They may be adapted to changing circumstances, but their essence endures. When elders teach young people to dance, when ochre is applied in sacred patterns, when songs are sung at dawn or dusk, the Dreamtime is made strong again. For Aboriginal people, ceremony is not an optional tradition. It is survival, not physical survival alone, but spiritual survival. Without ceremonies, the connection to ancestors, land, and law would weaken. With them, everything remains whole. A living cycle in the Dreamtime worldview. Ceremonies prove that time is circular. The ancestors danced, sang, and painted the world into being. Their descendants do the same, keeping the cycle alive. Every chant echoes the first songs. Every dance recalls the first movements. Every painted body becomes a living continuation of the ancestors' art. Thus, Rituals are not about the past, but about the present and future. They ensure that creation never ends, that the dream time is always now as we leave this part of the story. The importance of ceremony becomes clear. It is the heartbeat of dream time, the rhythm that keeps the ancestors close, the songs that keep the land alive. The next part of our journey will explore how Dreamtime wisdom is preserved and transmitted through oral tradition, stories, and art, forms of knowledge that ensure that dreaming can never be forgotten. The Dreamtime, as a living system of belief and law, could not survive without a way to transmit its wisdom across generations. Unlike societies that relied on writing, Aboriginal cultures carried their knowledge through oral tradition, song, art, and performance. This was not simply a matter of memory. It was an intentional system, tested over thousands of years to ensure that every law, every story, and every detail of country could be preserved intact. In Dreamtime culture, storytelling and art were not entertainment or ornament. They were sacred vessels of truth. Oral tradition as the foundation in Aboriginal communities. Words are not taken lightly. Stories told by elders are more than tales. They are teachings, maps, and laws. Oral tradition has the precision of scripture, yet the fluidity of performance. Elders recount Dreamtime stories not exactly the same way each time, but adapted to the audience, the season, or the lesson required. A child might hear the story of the Rainbow Serpent as a tale about respect for waterholes. An adult might hear it again, with deeper layers of meaning about law, morality, and cosmology. The oral tradition thus functions on multiple levels. It can delight children, guide hunters, teach social rules, and anchor spiritual life all at once. What makes this system extraordinary is that it does so without written words. The land itself is the text, and the stories are the annotations, remembered in rhythm, rhyme, and repetition. Storytelling as law Dreamtime stories are often referred to as law stories. This is because they do not merely describe mythical events. They establish rules of conduct. For instance, a tale about an ancestor who was punished for greed becomes the law against taking more food than one needs. A story of an ancestor who married within the wrong kin group becomes a law governing marriage and kinship. These narratives are both instructive and binding. To disobey the law is not only to defy society, but to disrupt the Dreamtime itself. This is why elders hold such authority. They are not simply older. They're the guardians of memory, the keepers of stories. To be entrusted with a Dreamtime story is to carry responsibility. Elders decide when and how stories are told, and to whom. Some stories are for everyone, while others are restricted, reserved only for the initiated. This careful control ensures that sacred knowledge is never lost or misused. The role of performance storytelling is often woven with performance. A tale may be told around a fire, with gestures, songs, and dramatic pauses to capture the audience. Or it may be enacted in a ceremony, with dancers taking the roles of ancestor beings, their bodies painted with ochre patterns that identify the characters. The didgeridoo or clapsticks provide rhythm, grounding the story in sound. This integration of word, sound, and movement makes stories unforgettable. A child may not remember every word spoken, but the rhythm of the clapsticks, the sight of painted dancers, and the echo of the didgeridoo embed the story in memory. Performance turns oral tradition into a full-bodied experience, ensuring that knowledge is absorbed deeply and collectively. Art as sacred text visual art is another pillar of Dreamtime knowledge. From ancient rock paintings to contemporary dot paintings, Aboriginal art encodes stories in symbolic form. These images are not illustrations in the Western sense. They are maps, spiritual diagrams, and sacred writings. For example, concentric circles in a painting might represent a waterhole or camp. Straight lines may show paths between sites, reflecting the journey of an ancestor. Animal tracks may symbolize both the physical animal and the spiritual being connected to it. To the uninitiated, these paintings may appear abstract. To those taught in their meanings, they are powerful texts of Dreamtime law. Rock art sites across Australia serve as permanent libraries of this knowledge. Some are tens of thousands of years old, preserving depictions of ancestral beings, totems, and ceremonial practices. These paintings are not relics, but living texts. Communities continue to visit them, adding new layers, repainting faded figures, and maintaining them as sacred places of teaching. Symbols as mnemonics. One of the remarkable aspects of Aboriginal art is its mnemonic function. Just as oral tradition uses rhythm and repetition to aid memory, art uses symbols to trigger recall. An elder looking at a painting can remember the entire Dreamtime story associated with it, much like a reader might recall a book from its cover. A young person can learn to read these symbols gradually, gaining deeper layers of understanding as they mature. This symbolic system ensures that vast amounts of information can be preserved and transmitted without writing. It encodes not only myths, but also practical knowledge: water sources, seasonal patterns, hunting grounds, and star maps. Art becomes both scripture and survival guide. Transmission across generations. The passing of knowledge is not casual, but highly structured. Elders determine when young people are ready to learn deeper stories, often during initiation ceremonies. Knowledge is revealed step by step, in alignment with a person's maturity and responsibilities. Children may first hear simplified stories, then later receive the full versions with their sacred meanings. This gradual process builds respect. It shows that knowledge is not a commodity to be consumed, but a gift to be earned. To know a Dreamtime story is to carry the weight of its law. This creates a culture where learning is lifelong and where wisdom is deeply tied to responsibility. The resilience of oral tradition. Even through centuries of disruption, oral tradition has proven resilient. Colonization, displacement, and forced assimilation all threatened to break the chain of transmission. Many languages were suppressed, and many sacred sites were damaged. Yet in countless communities, elders continued to tell stories, to paint, to sing. They adapted, sometimes blending traditions with new forms, but always holding to the core truth. The Dreamtime must be remembered, or the world itself would weaken. Today, Aboriginal art has become celebrated worldwide, with dot paintings and bark paintings displayed in galleries. While some of these works are for public appreciation, others remain restricted, carrying meanings that only certain people are allowed to know. This distinction reflects the enduring sacredness of art as text. At the same time, oral storytelling continues to thrive in communities, ensuring that younger generations remain connected to the Dreamtime. Knowledge as sacred responsibility. The Dreamtime teaches that knowledge is not free-floating but relational. It belongs to the land, the ancestors, and the community. To receive it is to take on duty, duty to the land, duty to one's people, duty to the ancestors. In this sense, oral tradition and art are not just about preservation, but about responsibility. They bind people to their world in ways that go far beyond memory. Toward the next chapter, as we reflect on the passing of knowledge, it becomes clear that Dreamtime is not a relic of the past, but a living, evolving system. Oral tradition and art are not nostalgic customs, but ongoing practices that ensure survival, continuity, and identity. They prove that truth does not need to be written to endure. In the final part of our journey, we will explore how Dreamtime, though ancient, continues to shape the present, how it has survived colonization, adapted to modern realities, and remains a source of wisdom for all humanity today. The journey through Dreamtime, from the creation stories of the ancestors to the rituals and art that sustain them, reveals a worldview unlike any other. It is not simply a mythology, nor only a religion, nor only a philosophy. It is all of these together, woven into a seamless whole. The Dreamtime is creation, law, memory, and identity. It is both ancient and present, both sacred and practical. Most of all, it is eternal. For Aboriginal peoples, the Dreamtime did not happen once in a distant past. It is always unfolding, always alive. The ancestors sang the world into existence, and their songs still resonate in the rivers, hills, and skies. Every ritual, every story told by a fire, every painted on canvas reactivates that creation. The Dreamtime is not remembered, it is lived. The web of connection. At the heart of the Dreamtime lies connection. between people and land, between humans and animals, between ancestors and descendants, between past and future. In this worldview, nothing is isolated. The land is not property, but kin. A river is an ancestor. A kangaroo is both prey and spirit. A star is both light and story. This vision of interconnectedness ensures that every action carries weight. To pollute a waterhole is to insult a spirit. To overhunt an animal is to weaken the dreamtime itself. This sense of connection also binds people to one another. Kinship systems, established in Dreamtime law, dictate who may marry, who must share food, who carries which responsibilities. These rules are not arbitrary, but grounded in the stories of the ancestors. By following them, people keep the social fabric strong. Thus, the Dreamtime is both cosmic and communal, both vast and intimate. The power of ceremony and story throughout our exploration. Rituals and storytelling have emerged as the living core of Dreamtime. They are not relics, but engines of renewal. When elders sing, when dancers embody the steps of spirits, when bodies are painted with ochre, creation is happening again. The world is being refreshed. Storytelling passes law and wisdom across generations, ensuring that nothing is lost. Art encodes knowledge in symbols, preserving it not in books, but in landscapes and canvases. The brilliance of this system lies in its adaptability. Stories can be told differently depending on age, season, or circumstance. Art can evolve in new forms while still carrying old truths. Rituals can shift yet remain anchored to sacred sites. This adaptability has allowed Dreamtime to endure for tens of thousands of years, surviving upheavals that would have erased lesser traditions. Survival through adversity, the colonization of Australia brought immense disruption. Lands were seized, languages suppressed, and sacred sites destroyed. Many elders were prevented from passing on their stories, and entire communities were displaced from their country. To outsiders, it may have seemed that Dreamtime would fade under these pressures. It did not. It persisted, in secret gatherings, in whispered stories, in songs sung when no authority was listening. Even during the darkest times, Aboriginal people held to their knowledge. Elders taught children when they could, sometimes disguising ceremonies as ordinary gatherings. Stories were passed down even when languages were lost, adapted to survive in translation. Today, many communities are reclaiming their languages, reviving ceremonies, and protecting sacred sites once more. This resilience testifies to the power of Dreamtime as more than belief. It is identity itself, indestructible as long as even one story is told, one song is sung. Lessons for the world in the modern era. The wisdom of Dreamtime carries profound relevance far beyond Aboriginal communities. At a time when ecological crises threaten the planet, Dreamtime offers a model of sustainability rooted in reverence and responsibility. It teaches that land cannot be exploited endlessly, that resources must be taken with respect, and that humans are not masters of nature, but part of its fabric. This perspective is not only ancient, but urgently modern. Dreamtime also offers lessons about memory and continuity. In a world obsessed with written texts and digital storage, Dreamtime shows that knowledge can endure through living practice, through story, song, art, and ritual. It demonstrates that truth does not need to be written down to survive. It can be carried in the body, in the land, in the community. Finally, Dreamtime reveals the power of seeing the sacred in the everyday. A rock is not only stone, but ancestor. A star is not only distant light, but story. This way of seeing transforms existence into something deeply meaningful. It dissolves the boundaries between spiritual and material, reminding us that the world is alive with presence. Dreamtime is eternal. What makes Dreamtime unique is its refusal to be confined by time. In Western thought, creation stories usually describe the beginning of the world a moment long ago. In Dreamtime, creation is never over. It is always happening. The ancestors walked the land once, but their tracks remain, and people retrace them with songs and ceremonies. Time circles back, and the Dreamtime is always now. This eternal quality ensures that Dreamtime will never be irrelevant. As long as people walk the land, as long as the stars shine, as long as stories are told, the Dreamtime continues. It is not locked in the past, but woven into the present. The dreaming for all while Dreamtime is specific to Aboriginal cultures. Its insights can inspire all humanity. It calls us to rethink our relationship with the earth, to remember that we belong to the land, not the other way around. It invites us to see the sacred in ordinary things, to treat rivers, forests, and animals not as resources but as kin. It reminds us that stories, songs, and rituals are not trivial but vital to survival. For Aboriginal peoples, Dreamtime remains a source of strength, guiding identity, law, and spirit. For others, it can serve as a mirror, reflecting what is missing in modern life: connection, reverence, and responsibility. In this way, Dreamtime is both particular and universal, rooted in the red soils of Australia, yet resonating across the world. Closing the circle as we close this exploration, we return to where we began, with the ancestors emerging in the Dreamtime, shaping rivers and mountains with their songs. They're still here, in the land, in the sky, in the people who remember them. Every story told, every song sung, every ritual performed continues their work. The Dreamtime has no end, and so this story, too, does not end. It circles back, ready to be told again, renewed with each telling. The Dreamtime is eternal. It is the song of the ancestors, the rhythm of the land, the memory of the people. It is not a myth to be studied, but a reality to be lived. In honoring it, we honor not only Aboriginal culture, but the very principle of life itself, that we are all connected, all part of a great, ongoing story.